Now we will listen to Professor Bossissi Nkuba, post-doctoral researcher of the University of Antwerp and the CEGEMI. Now, Professor Nkuba will take us again to the field, to the local level of the industrial and artisanal cobalt mining in the DRC. He will point at the environmental aspects of the cobalt mining. So that's very important nowadays as well. So how can cobalt mining be a catalyst for a just transition, as Mr. Boris Verbrugge and the other speakers have already been talking about? Thank you for taking the floor.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm going to briefly discuss something that really follows well what Boris has just said. It's the connection between the industries and artisanal miners, not as the problem is being faced in Europe, but how it happens more on the field. So to give a bit better context to what I'm going to explain, there is a climate change that is really talked about a lot. And of course, it's a global problem that has to be fixed. However, there is a big focus on electrification of the transport, which is just around 20%, but nearly 80% of the global emission are not in the transportation sector. But every time you will hear about solving the climate change problem, it goes to, they will most likely talk about transportation. So this has led many governments, the EU, Canada, and some United States to already have a schedule for banning combustion engine cars. And this is creating a very large demand for batteries. So at the same time as batteries have to be produced more, something that you may know about electric cars, they are very expensive. So for cars to be adopted widely, the cost has to drop significantly. And one of the things that has really to drop down is the cost of battery, which is a very big component of the cost of electric cars. And you can see this has really been happening over the years. The last year is mostly due to supply chain issues globally, that there have been an increase on the cost of a kilowatt hour of battery, but in general, it's decreasing. So if you look at these two graphs, the demand going up and the price going down, you can understand that these companies have a lot of pressure to really narrow down the cost of material that they are using. One of the key material being cobalt, of which most of the world supply is located not just in one country, but in one very tiny region at the south of Congo. It's like a 400-kilometer road trip, and you have most of the mine concentrated in this area. So the information we're going to discuss are the result of two projects that have been conducted by the CEGEMI in collaboration with the University of Bath under the fund from the Global Challenge Research Fund of the UK, and another project with ICF under the US Department. But this has been more focused on the presence of children in this sector, while the former has looked at all the supply chain and the interaction between the industries and the artisanal. So to give some historical context, already in the very beginning of Congo's colonization, copper extraction have been one of the biggest driver. You had this big industry, Union Minière du Haut-Katanga, that has been created later, a few years after the independence of Congo. It became CEGEMI, and that have been a big portion of the country's GDP and a big portion of the Congo as a colony before it was independent. However, like 30 years ago, things didn't work right. And this this state company collapsed. And you can see the car. Unfortunately, there is the tiny picture preventing to see how this tire has been flat for a long while, but it's so giant that you may not pay attention. But you have a very large cemetery of these very huge engines that have been dropped for several decades, and there is no plan to ever using them. So what is being done instead is CEGEMI selling to many companies in sort of joint venture, but where they have a very minority stake, and also the same for decision making. Many of these joint venture are done with companies from China or some others operating independently, but on the area where CEGEMI used to operate. And this is something we got from our interviews, where the local community has really noticed that whatever has been extracted in the past really can't compare to the current pressure under which cobalt and copper are being extracted. So as Sarah was explaining, such problems are really common in this region, but it goes a bit beyond that. You also have just next to it many cases like this, where you have so many people who are also trying to get a livelihood out of that. And this is one of the cases where there have been a pilot, and due to the problem of reputation, the problem of pressure, the company has withdrawn from its collaboration with artisanal miners, and they have been asked to relocate. This caused a riot, this caused so many problems, but due to this international pressure, some of the programs that could have worked have actually failed. So that's another problem we really need to address. The other thing that is very often happening on the fields, it's not just cobalt mining, but in many sectors in the extractive industries, women have it the hardest, because due to some traditional norms or some made-up norms, they are excluded from underground mining, and they can only take what is left on the surface or be involved in some activities that are not as lucrative, but that can even be way more dangerous for them. So people will tell you, underground is so dangerous for women, they should never be there. But they would go in water, they would go in areas where it's even more dangerous. And this is one of the social injustice that is very common. This is another site where we have more underground mining, and you have industries intervening after the artisanal. So it has been only artisanal. You have an area just next to it where people have been digging cobalt under their houses or in their backyards, but at some point they had to relocate them. Then you had industrial buyers that came and tried to put regulation. So you have cooperative, you have some sense of order, but there is also, even in this sense of order, a lot of injustice that easily underpinned. So the third site where we have been working is where you have a kind of connection between the industry, straight buying from artisanal miners, and you have many actors doing different things. And one of the actor that is very little talked about is the man who don't want to go in the pit or can't afford to go in the pit. So this is a miner we worked with who has failed, and he earns so little for his family. The only thing he can do is transporting by bike, but how much income can he have compared to the person who takes the risk? So it's literally, can you have enough to feed your family, if we can call that enough, or can you be safe but not have enough? So these are the tough choices that such a system has led people to have. So after they have got it from the mine, they take it to the depot. This picture shows two things. Once what women have to do, like taking mineral, washing it to increase a bit the concentration of cobalt, and then the depot in the iron one, where they go and sell their production. So one thing that is quite important is that you have more and more Chinese company, and the prices are displayed. And when you look at them, it may appear fair. You have the weighing that is done right away. But unfortunately, people are still cheated on by these same companies. So when you discuss with the companies, they say we have to pay so many taxes, we have to give money to this authority or that authority, and we have to do something. But the price, they just trick this machine, and you have miners coming and they have no way to counter verify what they have extracted, and they receive the price they get from this company, which can be much lower than what they should actually have. And to conclude my presentation, once you get at the border and you meet such a truck loaded with cobalt or with copper or with anything, there is actually no way to find out. We have talked a lot about all these initiatives, but in reality, at the state of today, it is so difficult to know like what is there, because you have this company that is like an intermediate between the miners in whatever condition they work or the industry, and then the exploitation. So this state, this actor make it so difficult, and so goes the words. We still have a lot of production, phones are still being sold, cars are still being sold, but some people are really paying a high price of that. Thank you. So maybe a small addition, we have made a 20-minute documentary on cobalt extraction. So if some of you are interested in getting a closer view of this story, you can contact us or access to those links and have it.